Alright, welcome back to another episode of Chaotic Torture RC. A couple videos ago I was working on my GCM scx10 build. And I installed the motor and such in it and was explaining a few things. And since then I've mounted my RC 4-wheel drive Warren winch up here on my bumper. I'm going to go ahead and show you all how the servo mounts to this. As I mentioned, there's some holes there. It's cut out and notched and it's got a couple brackets. Your servo, I'm just going to use a high-tech waterproof servo on this. This is such a light truck. This is a high torque one, but I don't need a super high-end servo on this. But what you're going to do is you're going to drop it down in that hole. Like I said, it's a little tight with the motor there, but once you get it set there, it's fine. Let me open up my screw kit here. Get me a few screws in this. The brackets are aluminum threaded, so it holds good. Since this isn't a high torque, super high torque servo, and there's not a whole lot of abuse in this general area, no need for Loctite. I mean, you could put it on there if you wanted, but none of my other two builds of this chassis have it, and I've never had any issues with the servo screws backing out. Let me turn this around to where I can see it some. And I'm generally not a fan of the whole chassis mounted servo thing. I understand for scale points it's nice and all, but it's got its cons and pros, just like everything else in the RC hobby. If I could get away with mounting this servo on top of the axle with this build, I honestly would. But with it up on the axle, it would be hitting things on the chassis the way the chassis is designed. So I just can't get away with it. So I have to mount it up here, which is alright. I mean, the servo is light. I'm not a fan of having all the extra. I don't mind the weight being up front, but I got a problem with it being up front and being up high. Anyways, now you see, since it's blue, that kind of gives it a nice contrast, so you can get an idea to see what the color looks, or what the servo looks like mounted in there. And since I have that done, I got my screw kit open here. I can go ahead and mount my front steering assembly up real quick. And then, as I mentioned before, I believe for the speed control I'm just going to use an AE5. Nothing special. This is just going to get the axial 35 turn motor in it for now. Good enough for some light duty crawling, but yet still enough torque to provide what it needs. Not building this truck for anything super fast or any serious bashing, just going more for a true scale appearance and performance and looks. Give me a nut for that. Got the nut started. I'll go back and tighten that up later. But now I got my steering. And I'm going to go ahead and unplug the motor leads from the speed control. I did go ahead and coil up my wires just to keep things short. Sorry about that. I'm getting messages through Messenger. I forgot to mute my devices. To attach the electronics to this, I'm going to use, I used to use 3M tape, but I've been using this Gorilla double-sided tape, and it has been probably some of the best double-sided tape I have used in years. It sticks real well. It holds up real good under various conditions, water and such. And believe it or not, when it comes time to clean it off, as well as the stuff sticks, it cleans up super easily. I was impressed with that. So I'm going to use it for mounting my speed control and my receiver. Like I said, normally I use Spectrum radio gear, but this is a build that my son's going to be running on, so we're just going to go with the Tactic radio that Axial sends with a lot of their ready-to-run kits. And that'll give him enough to operate a winch if needed. Truck will have lights and stuff, but I'll just do the, it won't be servo or radio operated, it'll just be switch. He doesn't need anything super fancy for that. Let me run my wires through here. And the only thing I don't like about putting my speed control here is this is going to be super short. And I had a conversation with a guy, I believe it was last week, that I soldered some stuff for on a speed control for him. He wanted to extend his battery lead. His was on a brushless setup that has a 150 amp charge draw on it. I didn't recommend adding length to that for that because when you got that high of a draw, it puts a lot of strain on your electronics. And the longer the wire, the more heat and resistance and stuff that's going to be there. Since this is brushed, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I'm going to take a female end for the Dean's connector, put it in there, run some wire leads to another male end, solder it up, run alongside the chassis to come to the back to where my battery is going to be at. Now if I was running brushless, I wouldn't do that. I would just set it up a whole new different way. But for the brush that's not a high draw, now if I was running say something along the lines of like a 12 churn, 10 churn brushed motor, I might not do that. But since I'm running a 35 churn, the amp draw on it is super light duty compared to higher turn motors. I'm not gonna worry about that so much with this. Trying to pull this double-sided tape off of the Tactic receiver now where I applied it. That's the one downside to this Gorilla tape, getting the backing. It sticks so well that getting the backing off can be kind of a pain. And usually I'd have an X-Acto knife on hand that would help with this process, but I had it in a different location the other day using it while doing some body fabrication work on another RC project. That's one of my downfalls. I moved to too many different locations while working on things, and I got stuff scattered everywhere. And this is the technically this is waterproofed. Doesn't look like it, just looks like your standard Tactic receiver, but this is the one I did on the Tech Tip Sunday where I coated it with marine grease. It's going to be fine. I want the wires as far away from the pinion and spur as I can, so I will mount that there on the tray. And then let me Plug that in. Plugged it in backwards. My apologies. And I had originally considered cutting some of these wires and putting new pins on them, but I just twisted them up. They'll be fine. Did the old school wrap it around something and twist. As for these, with them being so long, normally that's something that I would cut and clean up, but what I'm going to do is I will get zip ties out. I will pull all this wiring together and zip tie it so it sits something in a fashion, something similar to that. So that's basically how my front will look when I'm done. For my winch, I'm going to be using a Hey OK winch controller. I've got it over here somewhere. I'm not quite sure where I set it at the moment, but it's going to hook in there, and then I'm probably going to double side tape it to the probably on the back side, because this is a real small device. Probably connect it to the front of my servo case there. That way it's not going to be in the way of anything. And then I've been struggling what I want to do for lights, because I'm going to put some LED headlights in, some LED brake lights. And I come across this. I forgot that I had this. It is a Tamiya light kit. So I just have to figure out. This will probably end up getting mounted somewhere up inside the body, and then the wires running down with a plug that disconnects from everything. I'm not 100% sure yet, but once I figure out what I'm doing with it, I will get a video of that. I just figured had a little bit of time to kill today. I wanted to go ahead and get my servo in, get my receiver in. I've got to figure out what exactly I want to do with my on-off switch. I know my one with the RC four-wheel drive axles, I double-sided taped this to the inside rails, and then I could just reach underneath and do that. And I didn't have any major problems with it, but every once in a great while I might hit a rock that would hit it and bump it and turn the switch off. So I want to figure out another way to do so. A lot of people will just bypass that switch, cut it off, and twist the wires together. And like some of the newer axial A5s don't even have an on-off switch. They bypassed it already, so as soon as you plug it in, it turns on. Which is fine, but I don't want that due to the fact that this body is going to be hard mounted on. My battery wires are going to be a tight area to get to unplug and plug in. So I want to be able to manually be able to shut everything off. And I think what I'll do when I run the extension for this, I'll run it along the rail here. That way if in case of an emergency, if I ever had to, I could reach in from the underneath on the side and unplug it. That way, you know, just like in an emergency situation, if something was to start frying or smoking or sizzling, I don't foresee that happening with this setup, but I do want to kind of take that extra precaution with it. So I think for now I'm going to conclude this part of the video. Let me grab the body. I've set it somewhere here, down here. Now that I've got all this stuff in here, show you that, you know, the body still going to fit, still going to mount, bolt down as it should. Give you a little bit better angle of what it's going to look like now that it's got the winch and stuff on there. And there you can see, due to the chassis mount servo setup, you don't see your servo on there. So that's going to be it for the work that I'm working on today. I'm going to get everything out that I need to do more work on it, and when I get to that point I will hit record on the camera and involve you all in the assembly of the rest of it. thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you learned anything or found anything interesting about this video, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate it.